and I'm excited to have you join us again for PPL422 Land Law 2. Remember, Land Law 1 we majored on customary land tenure. Land Law 2 we are now looking at the Land Use Act and other statutes that guide land law in Nigeria. And of course, we have had some topics and I hope you have found them interesting. So today we are treating another topic that will enrich your knowledge of land law and prepare you, to practice well as lawyers in this very interesting and rewarding field. So let's not waste time. Let's go on and see what we have for today. So this is our fourth lesson, and in this lesson we'll be learning about easements. Some of the things you should be able to do at the end of the lesson will be to define easement, to discuss its nature and elements, and to distinguish between easements and other rights which have similar characteristics. Now, easement is said to be privilege without profit. It is defined as a non-possessory right to enter into and or use the land of another for a particular purpose. Please note that it is a right to use another person's land, but it doesn't give a right to be a possessor or to be in possession of that other person's right. Hence, it is said that it does not confer proprietary rights on the person, the dominant owner. The dominant owner is the person who has the right to enter the land of the other person. And the servant owner, who is the person granting the right, has restrictions on his own proprietary right as a result of the grant of an easement. Easement will be right of way, that's right to pass through somebody's land, right to light, right to air, right to erect signposts on the land of another person, right to water connection, and so on. There are very many different types of easements, and you will see them practically if you pay attention, in your day-to-day life. If it is negative, it is a restriction on the use that the person granting the right, that's the servant owner, may do with his land. So it will be, for instance, the owner of the next plot of land, the servant owner, has a right to build whatever he likes on his land. His building must not obstruct flow of air or light to the dominant owner's land. So that will be a negative easement. Now to elements. We have talked about tenements. So there are two types of tenements for every easement. There's dominant and there's servant. And then the owner of either tenement must be different persons. Can't be one person owning both. Then usually the easement is appurtenant to the dominant tenement. It's connected with the enjoyment, of the right in the dominant tenement. And then it must be capable of exact description, a capable grantor and capable grantee, meaning that you must be able to identify clearly who is granting the right and to whom the right is granted. So to your first activity, I'd like you to think about the types of easements and discuss them. So take some time and do that. Okay, so let's talk about how easements are acquired. Now, usually an easement originates from a grant from the servant owner to the dominant owner, and it can be acquired legally or equitably. Where it is acquired legally, it is usually granted by way of a deed. Now, where it is acquired equitably, it is usually granted verbally or by implication. So, implication being, it can be implied from the conduct of parties. So, really, equitable easement is based on the maxim that equity sees as done that which ought to be done. So, if I make a promise, it will be taken that, to grant easement, it will be taken that I have granted it even if I don't execute a formal document. determine whether, an extinguishment of easement can be implied from the conduct of the dominant owner. And then unity of sizing. Unity of sizing means where the two tenements now are, vested in one person. Remember, we said for there to be easement, there must be two. The two tenements must be owned by two different people. So where one person maybe buys the other tenement and so becomes the owner of both, then easement will be extinguished, because then there will be no need to seek permission, to be granted an easement right. Now let's distinguish between easement and different other rights. Now, easement and license. A license, of course, entails permission to enter another person's land. However, easement, though it's like a license, is not a personal right. While the license is personal, it is not dependent on the existence of, tenements, dominant and servant. Unlike it is dependent, sorry, unlike license, which is not dependent, and then it cannot be revoked unilateral by the servant owner. So the person granting the right can't just wake up and revoke it in easement, but for license that can be done. Easement and customary rights. Customary rights are those rights in communities that allow, groups of people to pass through the land of some other person on their way to the farm, to the market, and all of that, right? Now, both of them, of course, also entail permission to exercise rights over another person's land. However, unlike a customary right, there must be a grant of an easement, whether express or implied. That's not necessary for customary right. And then the grant must be dependent on, remember what we said, parties must be identifiable. So you must have a capable grantee, that is, the people to whom the rights have been granted, the person, specific person or persons. So it's not like a fluctuating number of persons as would occur for customary rights. To distinction between easement and public rights and easement and natural rights. For public rights, they are generally exercisable by every member of the public, and then there's no capable grantee. All right, and that's what distinguishes it from an easement. And then, of course, it's not dependent on a dominant tenement. So the right to use the public highway does not, occur as a result of you having a plot of land next to the highway and so on. Okay, and then for natural rights also are that, like customary rights, they are not dependent on a specific grant, whether express or implied, and they cannot be extinguished by unity of sizing as easements can be, you know. So those are the distinctions between easements and public rights or natural activity. I'd like you to differentiate between an easement and a license. Take some time and think about it. Okay, so in this lesson, we have learnt about easements. We have discussed the nature, the elements, the differences between easements and other rights with similar characteristics. You can view this video again, you can download it also and view it at your leisure. And if there's any to understand or any questions that you have to ask about what you have learned today, you can either post it on the discussion forum or you can join during the live class and ask your question. Okay, so until we meet again, I'll see you at the next class, and thank you for viewing.